GetLowered. Thanks again for tuning in to yet another video. Memphis coming at you live from the West Coast yet again, San Jose, California. So I test rode the 101 today, the Scout. After doing a little bit more research, I came to find out that the Scout Rogue is in fact the 2025. The difference between the Scouts and their Scouts, which is the new engine and the new improvements. Then you have the Scout 60, which is the smaller displacement, but those have the 2024, 2023, 2022 engine displacement, the engine and everything. They're pretty much the same. The Scouts, those have the Speed Plus, I believe that's what they're calling the engine. So you have the Speed Plus and then you have the Power Plus, which is on the Challenger and the Pursuit. So I just wanted to make that correction, since I was a little bit confused, because I rode the Scout 60, the Scout 60 Rogue, and I thought it was a 2024. Turns out it was in fact the 2025. So getting on to the 101, I mean, who is this bike for? Now, like I said, I test rode it and I 100% enjoyed it. All right, I really liked the bike. I was grinning the whole time I was test riding the bike. It felt perfect for my size. I'm 5'7". It felt great. I was just so surprised how well the suspension and the performance of the bike was handling. I was taken back. The seat, everything about the bike, the custom paint, the seat, like I said, I really felt planted and rooted on the bike. And even though, you know, I test rode it, I wasn't able to push it to its limits at all, nowhere near. And that's how it felt when I was test riding the bike. It felt like it could still do more, a lot more, because it was just so agile. The bike, light, I believe it's got over 100 horsepower, I believe, from factory, the 101. I was just, man, I was really surprised on how well it handled. So that being said, would I trade in my Sportster for that bike? Or I don't know how I'm gonna label this video. I mean, who is the Scout 101 for? I really don't know. The issue with me is just the price tag. That's my issue. I believe it's 17,000 bucks. Like I said, it handled amazing. The performance was very responsive, and the suspension was also fantastic as well. What is up with this lady? But 17,000 bucks, that's pretty steep. At the end of the day, it's still a Scout. It's still technically, it's still a $13,000 bike in my mind. That's just me though, all right? That's the way I see it. That's the way I believe it is. So if you're coming from a Sportster, you will get some benefits as far as the responsiveness and the way it handles. Of course, you know, the suspension is going to be improved, the stopping power, of course, because you do have dual disc brakes, you have inverted forks, piggyback shocks, but you still have a 3-gallon tank on it. All right, I just really don't know. As far as the 101, and then you look at the Sport Chief, which is only like $1,000 more. I really don't know, guys, as far as the prices, but as far as I see it, I would rather spend the extra $1,000 or $2,000 to get the Sport Chief, because the 101 Scout, it's still a city riding bike. The way it's set up, you have a 3-gallon tank, you have minimal wind protection. Yes, it's got a 6-speed transmission. Yes, it does. But man, I just don't see riding that bike long range. I've ridden my bike, my Sportster, long range, and then of course you guys know I also have a Lowrider S with the FXRT fairing and, you know, everything, the bells and whistles, the saddlebags and all this other stuff. But I really don't see, you know, at that price point, 17,000 bucks, I really don't see anybody. So you really have to want that type of bike. But like I said, the only issue I see is when it comes to long range, open road, high wind roads, it's gonna be tough. I mentioned in the video, you gotta have, for that bike, you gotta have 80% city and probably 20% highway, minimal highway riding. It really depends on your riding style. I'm not saying it's a bad bike. I loved it. All right, I enjoyed riding it. I enjoyed, like I said, the throttle response, the look of it, the feel of the bike, the seat. You know, I just felt like I was at home on that bike. But I don't know. Yes, it's got the TFT display. It's got the riding modes. It's all fantastic. It's all great. But 17,000 bucks is very steep for a Scout. You know, it's kind of like Harley putting together a build like mine for a Sportster and then demanding 17,000 bucks when you clearly know you could get that Sportster entry level at 12,000 or 9,000 bucks, whatever you guys want to look at. The A7IV, you know, that's what I'm, I don't know, that's just the way I see it. You think Scout and you think economy entry level bike. Yes, it's got everything on it, like I said, but that's kind of like my Sportster. It's got the inverted forks, it's got the taller suspension. At the end of the day, it's still a Sportster. It's not a bike that you want to take out long range and lay down a lot of miles. And it still has, of course, the 3.5 or the 3.3. I think my Sportster has a 3.5 gallon tank currently. I also have the 4.5. I have a bigger tank. I don't know. It's just, I mean, at what point? I'm saying if you're upgrading from a Scout 60, yes, it is an improvement, but is it a sufficient improvement to financially to spend the extra, you know, whatever the value of your Scout is? It's very tough to kind of narrow down the numbers. But I just, if you're coming from a Scout or you're coming from a Sportster or you're coming from, you know, a smaller cruiser, I 100% believe you should probably upgrade to a Chief, a full frame big V-twin, or a touring model, kind of like a Chieftain or a Pursuit. That's just me. I think as far as, you know, new riders coming into this, $17,000, that's a very steep price tag for an entry guy, for an entry rider. It's steep. All right, that's high. 17,000 bucks when you could get yourself a used bike or get yourself a standard or a Milwaukee Softail Street Bob, a Street Bob that has a 114, that has, you know, that torque. Yes, it doesn't have the it probably doesn't have the suspension of a 101, but I believe, what is it, $16,000 for a Street Bob? Not entirely sure. Or you can settle with the standard, you'll have that full frame. I just, you know, I'm just trying to figure out who is this bike for. All right, there was a fellow there that has an FTR. He was telling me he wanted to take a look at it, but in all honesty, the FTR is still a better bike than the Scout 101. We spoke about that. You know, he just mentioned that the suspension was pretty good on the 101, but he still likes the torque and I guess the rider position on the FTR. He's an older gentleman. I believe he's in his late 40s. FTRs are beautiful bikes as well. I really like the red tubing, and, you know, depending on which model you get, I think it's a really good looking bike, the FTR. And I don't know, yeah, that's another, you know, question right there. Do you go FTR or do you go Scout 101? They're pretty much around the same price point, right? $17,000 a piece. I believe the FTR does have the bigger tank. I don't know. That's a tough one, right? And you also have more performance on the FTR. Huh. Yeah, the owner was the FTR rider. He was just telling me you have twin throttle bodies on the FTR. So I believe it's got 120 horsepower. He told me he had a different sprocket on his, which, you know, changes the way the bike feels on, you know, as well. But I mean, the Scout 101 and the FTR, they completely feel different. Of course, you have a higher seat height on the FTR than you do on the Scout 101. I don't know, but I really don't know. It's just tough to kind of, you know, just find a market for that 101. Like I said, it's a great bike, beautiful bike. But if you were to ask me, or if it was me on the marketplace, I definitely just, you know, get the Sport Chief. You're already at that price point. What's an extra 1,000, 2,000 bucks? It's got the riding modes, so it's very responsive. It's got that torque. And like I said, potentially you have the bigger frame, you have the big V-twin, so you could go long range. And then of course you also have all the benefits of all the other all the aftermarket bolt-ons and stuff like that, saddlebags, and, you know, a larger fairing. The Scout has been out for a longer period of time, but I just don't think the aftermarket has ever adapted the Scout as of yet. I know the aftermarket, there's a few aftermarket exhausts for the Chief, but I mean, it's nowhere near Harley-Davidson, nowhere near. I don't know. You guys can let me know in the comments, what do you guys think? What do you think the 101 is for? It's a beautiful bike, great bike. I was extremely happy with it, but you know, I wouldn't be in the market for one. Same thing like I mentioned before, I own a 2020 Lowrider S. It looks like he stalled out. No, he's going, he's just not paying attention. Anyways, life's a risk. Yeah, that's right, my 2020 Lowrider S. 20,000 bucks, $18,000 of course for a Lowrider S. That one's, you know, 17,000. I don't know. I mean, you really, I mean, if you're in the market for a Scout, you specifically want that. You want performance, you want handling, you don't really care about the range of the bike or the aftermarket stuff. I don't know, it's just the way I see it. I love wrenching on my bikes. You guys see what I have here. I love modifying my bikes, bolt-ons, different kits, stuff like that. It's just a lot easier with Harley-Davidson. And I mentioned this before, if you're someone that wants a very good bike from the factory, and you don't want to modify it or buy add-ons or buy upgrades or anything like that, I think the Indian is where it's at. All right, you have the Pursuit, fantastic bike from the factory, performance, suspension, great, everything, fantastic bike. Same thing with the Scout 101, straight from the factory, another great bike, everything fantastic, handling, suspension, performance, light, and it looks fantastic. The paint job, the gold inverted forks, the piggyback shocks, everything great from the factory. If you have zero interest on modifying your bike, zero interest, or if you have no skill at modifying your bike, the Indian's great. Just go with the Indian. You don't have to do anything to it. But if you're someone that wants to modify, tweak, and then wants the capability of long range riding, you just have to get something else, because at that price point, 17,000 bucks, yeah. All right, anyways, life's a risk. Get out there and ride. Later.